Good evening, Dr. Rashidi. My name is Deni Vojnikovic, and for my ME 3210 Project 1 presentation, I decided to do my innovation on the packaging and system of a board game I'm very familiar with called Flamecraft. Now, to give a brief introduction into Flamecraft to provide some context for the innovation itself, Flamecraft is a game designed for 1 to 5 players in which the primary objective is to score as many points as possible. With by the end of the game, whoever scores the most points is the winner. In terms of some general components, Flamecraft is played on a long playmat with various player tokens that move about the board and some additional cards. But the primary point of note in terms of the innovation itself is that Flamecraft is a resource-based game in which there is a common pool of various resource tiles that players throughout the course of the game gradually acquire resource tiles and then spend those resource tiles in order to acquire points to achieve the objective of the game. Now, when it comes to the actual problem with Flamecraft, while I personally have a lot of experience playing the game, by its nature as a board game, I've also seen a lot of problems that my play groups or the other people that I play the game also have, which is that the setup and cleanup time of Flamecraft can be incredibly time extensive because there is no dedicated resource space within the actual packaging of Flamecraft. This image on the right is taken from an unboxing of Flamecraft itself to show the proper factory packaging you receive all the contents in which you have the various types of cards and player tokens that are necessary, but there is no dedicated space for the player tiles that you have to constantly interact with. Seen on this slide, in which you essentially get 2 cardboard sheet cutouts where you puncture out each individual tile individually, and then in addition, in the packaging, you are provided Ziploc bags to be able to sort the various resource tiles into. However, you get a big problem with this in that now you have just a bunch of loose components that you have to deal with and organize. In terms of the actual problem itself, now every time you go to set up Flamecraft, you need to open up 7 Ziploc bags, pour out the contents somewhere. You don't have any specific place to actually put it, so they usually take the form of loose piles somewhere within the game area so people can have access to them. So now, okay, you've set it up and all of the resource tiles are now on the board, but because Flamecraft requires the resources so frequently, you are constantly picking up amounts of the resources, putting them back down. Those piles will gradually sort of fall apart and dissociate into just a pool of resources, which then when it comes time to clean up the game once the gameplay is concluded, now you have this loose pile of various resources, and some people also still have some resources left over from the rest of the game, in which now you have to take the 7 Ziploc bags you already used, sort out every single type of tile into its own pile, and then get those piles within the Ziploc bag so you can finally get everything into the box itself in some relatively convenient way. And ultimately, it just consumes a lot of time. It's a lot of time that you are not playing the game and instead have to do this very tedious, unenjoyable work of organizing all these resource tiles because there are so many due to the nature of the game. In addition, as some minor problems that sort of come with this way of organizing the resources, the Ziploc bags themselves do kind of slowly degrade and worsen over time. Because you're constantly interacting with them, you get maybe a little bit of a grimy feel to them, or just because of the constant use, you get some stretching and they just objectively look unappealing. Especially having them in the box, there is this level of poor quality that comes off by having everything in these individual bags. Now, in terms of the solution, I went for what I would argue is probably the simplest, cleanest way of just introducing a specific tray which is integrated into the box itself and can detach when play is initiated. So now in the actual packaging itself, essentially that tray would be present and all of the other parts would be distributed to the other two sections below it. When it comes to the actual integration, it slots into that top quadrant. In order to do so, it has very specific dimensions. It is 7.5 inches across, 4.5 inches wide, 2 inches high, and 1.825 with pockets that are 1.825 inches deep, so that there's a little bit of space on the bottom so it doesn't cause any conflicts. In addition, in the design, there is a small little bottom lip to it to ensure that it can stay relatively secure in the box and not rattle too much. But the lip isn't so wide that it becomes impossible to take out. So now, looking with this integration in mind, instead of having those 7 Ziploc bags, you can instead have the singular tray that holds all of the contents. And now, anytime you want to set up the game, instead of having to open up these Ziploc bags so that they're easily accessible, you can instead just take out the tray, put it somewhere within the game area where everyone can reach, and now everyone has access to a very consistent pool of this consistent pool where all of the resources can go. Going into the manufacturing of the insert itself, keeping it simplest, in terms of material, it would most likely be some form of ABS plastic, with the method being injection molding. Specifically, these two were chosen as one, ABS plastic inserts are fairly common in like board game packaging design, from my own personal experience and from some general research. So I'm sure whichever manufacturer is producing the board game of Flamecraft, there's most likely already some pre-existing structure for doing some kind of ABS injection molding. In addition, it's an incredibly cheap material that's also extremely flexible, and there's tons of varieties if they need to meet any kind of specific conditions. On top of that, due to the flexibility, one of the nature of the tray itself, you have a lot of rounded edges and some tight fits to kind of minimize the amount of material that's necessary. And ABS is just a really good material for making these kind of inserts that maybe don't necessarily have to be super precise, but do need to have fairly thin walls and not be particularly expensive. In terms of citation, there was only one piece of content that was necessary, which was an unboxing video of Flamecraft, so that I would have reference for what Flamecraft looks like when it's directly out of the box, how exactly it is packaged when you get the product. Other than that, there is, I suppose, the citation of the general mechanics of Flamecraft itself, which is included on the box. But yeah, that concludes the presentation itself. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.